Beep, 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 beep. Morning all. How we doing? Right, I'm still doing the digging on the UKRI thing, but it's taking a bit longer than I expected, so we're gonna have to wait. I'm gonna do a couple of other things. But before that, I want us to visit Australia. How you doing, mates? Cobber? Australia, land of neighbours, Priscilla, queen of the desert, and kangaroos. Right? I've never been, but it seems to me like a glorious place. A glorious place. So Australia, some of you may know, has really women there have had the most terrible time, particularly lesbians. What's going on in Australia? They are more ahead of the game in this lunacy than most places. So it is incredibly heartening to see that we have an open letter to Australian health bodies regarding gender affirming care, which has come from Rachel Wong on Twitter. As I saw this as part of Rachel's posts, and it's alerted me to it. And I thought that we really should give this some attention because it's great to see this kind of activity taking place in Australia as they push back against this dreadful medical scandal. So, lots of other things going on in the world, but it's good to do this because of the difficulties I know are faced down in Australia, as I'm informed by my Australian folk who are on the Warrior Teacher course. They tell me the details about what is happening and how hard it is to currently get anything passed and get anything done about this terrible medical injustice. So let's have a look and see what's being said by these 100 doctors. As clinicians, we call on our professional bodies and regulatory authorities to urgently acknowledge and respond to recent international and local developments in the field of youth gender medicine. These developments indicate that what is known as the gender affirmative treatment model, brackets GAT, G-A-T, GAT, currently used in Australian public youth gender clinics, risks the health and well-being of vulnerable children and adolescents. The UK CASH review, widely recognised as the most comprehensive review of paediatric GAT, gender affirming treatment model, and a growing number of systematic reviews, conclude the evidence for puberty blockers and cross-sex hormones for young people with gender dysphoria is weak and uncertain. Invasive treatments such as puberty blockers, cross-sex hormones, and surgery hold known and potential risks of harm. These include sterility, urogenital sexual dysfunction, effects on bone, brain, and cardiovascular health. It's extraordinary, I think, as we've moved somewhat here in Britain to look and see where the Australians are, but heartening that there is this move forward to end this nonsense. Now, I've said it 100 times, we end it for everyone. This here specifically, talking about vulnerable children and adolescents, particularly as we know that 80% of them are either autistic, ADHD, looked after kids, or predominantly same-sex attracted. This is in fact conversion therapy. It continues. Due to the above, countries including Finland, Sweden, Norway, Denmark, Brazil, and the UK have all recommended their use be restricted in minors. In our case, completely stopped. We're getting there. Current Australian standards ignore evidence supporting a normally timed puberty leading to resolution of symptoms in approximately 85% of children with gender dysphoria. Now, I'm not convinced gender dysphoria is a thing. I think it's all about mental health, and I think gender dysphoria is the presentation of a greater malaise. And I know there are a lot of people that think that too. It is also something that came from the DSM, the Diagnostic and Statistic Manual, which in itself is a very dodgy document altogether. You may have seen the video that I put up recently with a lecture about that. A guideline review undertaken as part of the CASH review rated the Australian standards 19 out of 100 for rigor of development. 19 out of 100. This is experimentation on children, people. Experimentation on children. I'm hoping what will happen is that the same conversation that's had in the UK will sweep Australia at a rate of knots, so we can protect these young people and children as soon as possible from the dangers of this medical atrocity that is gender affirming treatment. It continues. The Federal Circuit and Family Court of Australia recently relied on the findings from the CASH review and clinical evidence in re Devine. In his judgment, Justice Strum, very important this, endorsed the CASH review, regarded the risk of harm from puberty blockers as unacceptable, rejected the idea that gender identity is innate and immutable, criticised the gender clinic's policy of unreserved affirmation, found that a senior gender-affirming clinician had failed in her duty of impartiality as an expert witness. That's interesting, isn't it? Failed in her duty of impartiality. What, lied? Don't you just love law speak? Is that what it means? Does it mean lied? An Australian can tell me in the comments, because they may well know more about this than I do. In fact, they probably do. But whether or not that's what that actually means, they lied. Found the gender clinic lacking in its approach to assessment, diagnosis and therapeutic options. It's extraordinary that the same issues repeat and repeat. And this is the other side of the world, from my point of view. The other side of the world. You know, there was an interesting exchange on Twitter yesterday where somebody put up a headline about a trans Australian, and somebody asked the question, "What's a trans Australian?" And I said, "It's a man in a dress upside down, going down the plug hole the wrong way." Because I'm nuts. The judiciary has set an example of considered, evidence-based, developmentally appropriate analysis, which Australian health bodies have so far failed to adopt, leaving Australian clinicians in legal jeopardy. So they're the legal risk that comes from following this gender-affirming treatment nonsense. A US Health and Human Services review of treatment for pediatric gender dysphoria, released the 1st of May 2025, found that there had been a rapid expansion and implementation of a protocol that lacked sufficient scientific and ethical justification. There you are, we've been medically experimenting on children. And when confronted with compelling evidence that this protocol did not deliver the health benefits it promised, and that other countries were changing their policies appropriately, the US medical professionals and associations failed to reconsider the gender-affirming approach. In other words, those medics that were meant to look after people, nolle nocere, firstly do no harm, ignored the evidence of their eyes. But we've seen similar over here. We've had this new law, but we've had this clarification from the Supreme Court, and organisations are choosing to ignore it because they are captured by ideologues. We must begin sackings. We must begin identifying these people. Time to go McCarthy on their arses, I say. Australian health bodies need to respond to this compelling evidence to avoid the same error, which is what occurred in the US, which is they ignored it. We call on Australia's peak medical and professional bodies and institutions to cease the use of puberty blockers, cross-sex hormones and surgery for children and adolescents due to the lack of evidence of benefit and known risks of serious harm. We request unambiguous advice to the profession that clinical practice should align with the Cash Review and the National Association of Practicing Psychiatrists Australia, which recommends psychosocial support as the first-line intervention for young people with gender-related distress. This is great news to see the Australian Doctors Federation speaking out in such a way, and I only hope it begins a tsunami of change in Australia, because they do seem to be stuck. Giggle versus tickle, the type of intrusion by these vile cross-dressing men and AGPs has caused enormous trouble. It's time that Australia caught up, and I think with the help of the TERFs in Australia, the women doing the work, and the men, and the Australian Doctors Federation, it may be that we'll begin to see a move forward, which will help our friends down under. Meanwhile, to the Australians, thank you very much for the series about the Artful Dodger, which I thoroughly enjoyed with Thomas Brodie Sangster, and I'm waiting for the second series. There you go. My thanks to Australia. I shall see you all later. This is good news. Keep up the good work, people. Bye-bye.